to start with a little bit high-level view of how I looked at some of the startups and how I think of growing, building companies. And then we'll get into Q&A. We all learn from each other. It's essentially a journey. Let me use a few slides to give you a big picture view of the opportunities and how I see opportunities. Technology evolves all the time. You expect it. Okay? But every decade or two, there's some mega changes that take place. Those changes create an opportunity to disrupt incumbents and build new companies. The success in a given area holds you back to be successful in the next area. And that's why I often look for opportunities that are disruptive. This is not incremental change. If you look at the past 20, 30 years, we've seen mobility came and changed how the world works. Now, there's a time when everyone wanted to build a mobile company. But some of these technologies aren't about a company in isolation. You want to use a mobile device. You don't really build Salesforce for mobile device. It just becomes one more medium. But how do you enable some of the new applications? That's how you think about it. IoT, OT devices are creating tons of telemetry. What can we do with that? Preventive maintenance, all those things can be done out there. We all know how cloud has changed everything. So these are kind of big step function technologies. And now we got AI, Gen AI on top of that. Okay. These things create opportunities, these things create challenges. When these things happen, lots of these large, big companies disappear. Think of Salesforce, right? They basically borrowed the idea of CRM from Siebel Systems, and they said, we're going to do it in the cloud. They did not really take the software, say, let me do it the same way. They thought outside the box. They realized that this got to be a multi-tenant, cloud-native applications to build. Right? I still recall in 2008, I had just started Zscaler. And I ran into a friend of mine who was working at Oracle, selling Siebel systems because Siebel was acquired by Oracle. And I said, hey, do you run into Salesforce? I was curious to see how Salesforce and Siebel things happening. He said, not really. I said, I see them talking about some of the large customers now. He said, they're ankle biters. We don't care about them. Okay. Now think of where Siebel is today, where Salesforce is. So it's some of these disruptive technologies that change how you do things, how things happen. Now, when you do this, you need to evangelize because there's a lot of inertia. People are used to doing things the old way. But that's how one has to be thinking about. Now, when some of these things happen, fundamentally the architecture changes. Okay. And that's really the mega shift. I mean, think of traditional cars have been getting better and better every year. They're pretty good. But if you want zero emissions, that you want a higher level of reliability, you can't be building it with tons of parts. Look at an electric car. You open the hood, there's nothing underneath. You can never get to zero emissions with traditional cars. So when you move from traditional to electric car, that's a mega shift. It creates interesting opportunities out there. When I started Zscaler, I was thinking about that kind of mega shift. Really, how do you get away from firewall-based security to a totally new way of doing things? And then you're thinking outside the box. You're not trying to incrementally improve what's being done. Take another example, more of consumer play. We all loved our DVD players because they were the best thing in the world. Then Netflix comes and says, hey, let's move on. You simply click and you got what you want. Why worry about DVDs? That's another example of really thinking about inside, outside the box and doing something disruptive. Those are the kind of things I look for when I say, what should be stopped? Okay. Now, digging a little bit deeper on how I came about Zscaler. You know, I'm fortunate. I'm a lucky product of American dream. And sometimes I wonder if my life is real or I'm simply dreaming. Right? As you may have seen, I was born and raised in a tiny village in the foothill of the Himalayas in northern India. My village got electricity after I finished my 8th grade. We got running water after I finished my 10th grade. But I loved to study, so I was a very good student. And I got into IITs, and by accident, I did not even know IITs existed. Okay, I just learned about them by accident, got there, then came to the US to do my master's. And then I got into the startup world by accident too. Because I was an engineer doing software development. I moved into sales because this startup I was working on, again as an employee at that time, their sales engineer called in sick. And my boss said, "You wrote the system, why can't you do a demo to this customer?" This was my first demo in my life to a customer. It went very well. And as I drove home, I said, that was a lot more fun than writing code all day long. Okay. And that's one kind of triggered me to call IBM, and I moved to sales and marketing. So I've kind of gone through some of this stuff from engineering to sales and business background. And I went through 4 startups. And in 2007, 2008, having done those 4, I had no interest in doing one more startup and selling it. I wanted to do something big. I wanted to do something lasting. And how did the idea of Zscaler come about? Right? If you think about 2008, internet was a big source of information for all of us. Having used Salesforce and NetSuite since year 2001 for all of my startups, and at that time, each of them was under $10 million in annual sales. But I loved them because they actually worked very well. And I was really very convinced that most of applications got to move to the cloud because it makes sense. And iPhone was just announced to the big screen. And AWS had just launched compute as a service. I said, in this new world, if applications move to the cloud and we become more and more mobile, we should reimagine the network, we should reimagine security. This old metaphor of really network and security used to be the following. Your data center is connected to everything. And you go to your branch office, you get on the network, you move laterally, you find applications, you connect, life is wonderful. Or if you're sitting at home, you got on VPN, you became a part of the network. I call this model hub and spoke network and castle and moat security. So it worked when data center was the center of the universe. When applications start to move out, when people start to work from everywhere, this model starts falling apart. And the notion was, how do we really look at it in a totally different way? I looked at the network almost like a highway system. Before nations built highways, if you are a big, rich corporation, you could build private roads connecting your headquarters to your regional hubs. But once highways are built, why would you care about building private roads? I thought about internet as the cyber highway. Why can't we start using internet as the network rather than having to build private networks? That was number one thing. Number two thing was this security, castle and moat. If you look at the red lines, that's the perimeter built by firewalls and VPNs. Inside, everything is trusted. Outside, everything is untrusted. But your network is so vast, it's everywhere. Once the bad person passes the highway, passes the moat, they can go anywhere and everywhere. That's why most of the attacks happen. Ransomware all happen this way. So we basically said, why should we let anyone get inside the castle? There should be no castle. If entity A user, want to access an application, we should build a switchboard, a policy engine. Literally almost like the old school phone switchboard. You call the switchboard, I want to talk to John. You get connected to John and John only. One-to-one connection, you're not on the network, you're not insider, you're all untrusted. That was the simple notion. Really, we worked on. It was a pretty kind of a crazy idea, but the notion was, it's not just the users. Sorry, just the previous slide. In this model, we said the internet is a network, you simply get a broadband connection and should work. And this is not just good for users. How about connecting your branches? How about IoT, OT devices? How about B2B partners? So everything could talk to anything driven by a policy is the model we focused on. And without going into detail, this thing has evolved. Now it's called Zero Trust Architecture. Pretty popular. Unfortunately, when new technology comes and it becomes popular, every company embraces it. It just becomes meaningless because incumbents are worried about getting disrupted, so they all start kind of using those terms out there. But the notion was, you check X number of things before you make the connection. It starts getting confusing sometimes when we say you're not on the network and all. So we came up with this analogy to explain to our customers. If I come to see you at your headquarters, they're going to stop me at the reception, check my ID, give me a badge. And if they said, Jay, go to 7th floor, room 22, no escort needed. Once I'm in, I go wherever I need to go. If any room is open, I could go in. If a room is locked, perhaps I can't go in, or maybe I tinker with the lock and get in. So you go, you do what you need to do, you leave. That's like being on the company's network. Once you're on the network, you go wherever. The better approach would be, in my metaphor, they check my ID at the reception, they give me a badge, then they say, Jay, stop. You will be escorted to the meeting room and meeting room only. In fact, you don't even need to know where the meeting room is. If you are going to meet someone in DOD or Defense Department, they're going to say, I'm going to blindfold you and escort you. And then blindfold take you up. In this metaphor, rooms are like your applications. The building is like your data center or cloud. You just have one-to-one connection. That's really how things had to be done, which is the opposite of how network and security has been done before. That really was the new idea. It took a fair amount of time to evangelize it, right? But it really helps because it can stop a lot of bad stuff. A little bit on AI, right? That's the new big thing that's coming out there. The notion here is really not to say, AI, today we talk about, I'm building an AI company. It's like in 96, when I started the first company, we used to say we're building an internet company. 10 years ago, we used to say, I'm building a cloud company. Today, it sounds silly. Every company has cloud aspect of it. AI will be part of everything in life, every part of it. So it's not really AI itself. And it's wonderful, the kind of stuff it does. You all read about the magic it can do. But AI is also dangerous too. Okay. You can do some crazy stuff, just like any technology. So at Zscaler, our goal is to make sure how do we fight AI with AI, and you can. Here's an interesting example. If you want to ask ChatGPT and say, you can be very specific. Show me all the firewalls and VPNs for this company with all the vulnerabilities they have and put it in a nice tabular format. It would have taken weeks and weeks for someone to find this information. Now, in under 30 seconds, you know what's bad, what are your vulnerabilities to go after them. So this is the kind of stuff they can do, but you can also use AI ML to do some fancy stuff as well. First of all, when you collect tons of telemetry, AI ML, especially predictive AI, you can actually figure out a needle in a haystack, which you couldn't figure out before. And also for communication, there's a lot of other stuff that can be done. You submit prompts out there. We sitting in the middle can examine the kind of prompts you're submitting, the kind of question you're asking, the kind of information you're providing. Maybe your employees by mistake are submitting some confidential information that shouldn't be sent out. So all the technologies evolve fairly rapidly. It's a matter of how fast some of the businesses embrace it. And that's probably the biggest issue. I was asked to talk to the board of directors of a very large private bank in India by the CIO last year. And this board member asked me this question. She said, Jay, you're sitting in Silicon Valley, you're running one of the largest cloud security companies, you're dealing with some of the very large Fortune 500 companies who have all the money, all the access, all the money, all the access to technology and all the expertise, but I still read so many of these companies are getting breached. If that's happening to them, what hope do we have? Took me some 30 seconds to think through. I hadn't thought of a question like this. My answer was, yes, what she said was all true. But these bigger companies have tons of inertia and hackers have no inertia. Bigger the company, the longer they take to move. And hackers move faster. So one of the key things our large or any business has to do is really being able to be nimble and being able to move faster rather than sitting on old technologies. In fact, innovations keep on happening. It's wonderful. The way we look at it is we can build everything. So Zscaler, we do very selected acquisitions as well. So done a number of small focused investments which aren't done for revenues. They're done for innovations and technologies that can become part of our platform that can be integrated. And we have a venture arm where we selectively make some venture investments in an area that are synergistic to Zscaler. So it's a little bit high-level view. With that, Gary, if you want to join me, we can have some fun conversations. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Jay. This was very inspiring. Please.
Take my bottle of water.
Here it is.
Good. Thank you.
No, thank you, Jay. A bunch of questions for you. You started Zscaler 2008. I remember meeting you around 2010. We had the same banker who worked with us in our previous companies. You could have retired at that time. And what keeps you going? I know right after this, you're back to back in meetings, and this just gets you moving, right? So what keeps you moving? And then a second question, maybe I can ask, why don't you?
So I have a fairly simple philosophy of life. If you love your life, don't waste your time. If you don't waste your time, you do something to make a difference. And that's what drives me. I can go to the beach when I'm bored after a couple of hours. Okay. As I'm born and raised in Himachal Pradesh, I love mountains, I love nature. So my best vacations are in places like that. But once I'm there for 2 weeks and say, now what? Okay. I mean, there's a literally urge and drive to do something to make a difference in life. And Zscaler, for example, for us is not a business, it's more of a mission. Human beings are driven by a sense of accomplishment. We all feel good about achieving something. When we feel about securing 45% of the Fortune 500 companies, when you feel like, these biggest of big companies, the Siemens and GEs and United Air and Goldman Sachs of the world depend upon you to securely do their business. It's a satisfying thing and it's a challenge. You know, human beings love challenges. If you look at something as a challenge, you overcome it, we all feel good about it. That's simply what drives me.
Great. Now, Jay. So, Jay, cybersecurity is a complex problem. And obviously, you guys are the leader in the cloud security. As you said, you are serving 45% of the Fortune 500. And if I were to predict, right, it'll be 75% by end of next year, and hopefully 100% soon. Half a trillion transactions going through your platform. And I use the term, we are truly in the world of cyber war. So when you are meeting with customers, and I'm assuming you're available to your customers 24/7, your phone is always on, right? what guidance you would have? How do we tackle this cyber war? And it's a teamwork. And with the data which you're collecting, how can you warn and prevent some of these ransomware attacks and more?
Right. So all CIOs, CISOs, board members worry about cyber. Okay. You know, till very recently, they left cyber to CISOs. The focus has dramatically changed in the past 4 or 5 years. CISO used to complain and say, I don't get enough attention and budget. That's not the case anymore. Now they complain that I get too much attention and I'm being asked to present to the board every quarter. That's a good thing. The challenge these companies are facing is inertia. Security can be very confusing. And a lot of vendors who come in, they make it even more confusing. I was talking to a Gartner research director after RSA conference one day. I met him for dinner and he said, Jay, my day started at 7:30 a.m. I have had 8 meetings with different vendors. I'm more confused now than I was at the start of the day. I mean, this person's job is cyber and nothing else. Think of what a typical CIO, CISO goes through. So there's a bunch of confusion. But it doesn't need to be complicated. The big part of the thing we do is we evangelize to really show them the way. I mean, to me, the biggest reason companies getting compromised is inertia. A typical company, the biggest spend in security is firewalls today, even today. Firewall is a moat. They're building castles around it. Once they get inside, they go everywhere. Look at what happened to Maersk. One machine at the headquarters, 135 countries, everything was down. Everything was down. The ships were stranded at ports in Hong Kong and Singapore and New Jersey. There's no system to tell them what to really offload and what to put back on. It's horrible. In fact, the funny story is, they had the office in Ghana, Africa. Okay. And that office happened to have power outage that time. So one box that survived was a DNS server in Ghana. Without the DNS server, you can't even build the network. So they really took that server, brought it to London, had a 200-person team from Deloitte, 200-person, they had 400 people trying to get the thing up and running, the network. It was old school stuff. They all using the older stuff. Companies need to move to new architecture. Think of castle and moat security. The moat was wonderful till you had these foot soldiers and there was no cannons. Forget about Air Force. Once cannons and Air Force come, why would you build moats? Our companies are still spending half the money. When a company gets breached, they guess what? They buy more of the same because that's what they know. I think changing these things takes some time. Take even cars, right? Traditional to electric, it's taken some time. Things happen, but companies who are progressive, they do good stuff, they get ahead. Technology, they are laggards, they adapt. People who slow down, they struggle with it. But technologies are there. CIOs, CEOs need to really ask their teams, to challenge the team. Unless we challenge about thinking outside the box, we keep on doing the same thing, progress never happens. That's the bigger issue. The main thing I do is I basically talk about how to protect yourself.
Agreed. And Jay, I would say human risk is also a big factor. Identity, that continues to be a mega issue. Right. And I know you guys are doing things in that area. But Jay, let me ask you this. You build multiple companies. And you touched on it, as you launched Zscaler, how did you think differently? You talked about the business problem you're solving. And this is more for people to know when they're looking at launching a new company, what is that big business problem they're trying to solve? How do you get the right founding team members, co-founders, and A plus players, not B players, right?
Right.
And what is that initial funding? Because at the end of the day, if you have to scale the company, if you take too much money up front, it becomes a complex challenge.
Yes, that's a multi-part question. So, look, I had no master plan for startups, okay? I stumbled across startups, okay? In 1996, I was in Atlanta working for a small public company as the number 2 man. And this was a query and reporting tools company. And I was reading about this company, Netscape, that went public, Mozilla browser, World Wide Web. Since I love to read, I read everything about it. I was fascinated by it, and I said, wow, with a simple browser, you can access information. That was a new thing. Otherwise, you always needed special software. I said, this new technology should take off. But if it takes off, we are all connected to the internet. It's like a highway system. Any bad person can come and try to get into your house. So there got to be need for cybersecurity. That was a simple thought. And then, as I said, this gentleman, Mark Andreessen, who had launched this company, he was fairly young. He had graduated from UIUC Urbana-Champaign. I was talking to my wife, Jyoti, and said, if this young guy can do a startup, why can't I do a startup? It was a crazy kitchen table conversation. And as we thought more and more, the idea grew. It's kind of neat to go from I want to do something, I wish to do something, to a burning desire. Okay. And burning desire happens when you really know about stuff, you build convictions. So lots of people do startups for the sake of getting rich quick. Okay. I think it doesn't really work most of the time. If you're really into it because you have conviction, enjoy, you fun, that works. So that's the stage we got into. So I put a business plan together, went to see it, about 10 VCs in Atlanta, and they all asked me the question, what startup experience do you have? Okay. So it turned me down. I talked to my wife, Jyoti, and said, hey, the only way we can do it is if you put our life saving on the line. It's scary, and we talked about it for a week, and then Jyoti said, yeah, go, because I was pushing for it. And then the way we got to that decision was, this was the final thing. What's the worst thing that can happen? The company fails. Okay, we lose our savings. The next question was, can we get a job? The question, of course. And that's how we moved into. But then, when you do startup like that, you actually want to be narrow and deep. Okay. You can't be trying to spread too much. You will have too many competitors, to a limited resource. You can't be building a big platform. So I always said, you need to be kind of maybe a 2 feet wide and 20 feet deep. You are the experts, you're the heart surgeons in that area, your offerings are better than anybody else, and you're not competing with everyone. That's all. Secure IT was done, and then it just went very well, very quickly, got acquired, the stock goes through the roof, my employees did very well, and this felt like, wow, startups are supposed to be hard. It was easy, it must be a fluke. And that's when we moved on to say, let's do it again. And now we didn't need to talk to any VCs, so we put on live. We started 3 companies, staggered them like having kids, 1 or 2 years apart. But they were narrow and deep. And good teams, good timing, lots of hard work. They all became quite successful and eventually got sold. So then in 2007, when I did most of the thinking of Zscaler, it was different. I did not want to do one more startup and sell it. I was going to do something big, something lasting. So I'm going to do a platform. And fortunately, I didn't have to go and raise funding. Instead, I'm going to put whatever money it takes to do the startup. And to some degree, I'm not saying you do it all yourself, but you know when you put your own money, it's a little different feeling altogether. So when entrepreneurs ask me the funding, I say, yeah, get some funding from good advisors, but put your skin in the game as well. You'll do it very differently. Sometimes people raise tons of money. I think raising too much money kind of spoils things, right? The mental set is not good. It's not, we got $100 million, let's go, mahogany desks, all that silly stuff, right? So second, with Zscaler, the thought from day one was really build something lasting and big. I got inspiration this time from Mark Benioff. I've been using Salesforce, as I said, from 2001. I looked at the way he was disrupting Siebel systems. I want to build a cloud-based multi-tenant architecture. And we made sure we took no shortcuts. So I think it's a matter of conviction, doing the stuff. You're going to run into roadblocks. If you don't, something is wrong. If you're solving a trivial problem, lots of people can solve it. You need to solve some harder problems if you really need to build a sustainable business. That's really how we thought. And the founding team is probably one of the most important teams. You need to have people who are committed and test them out. Lots of people just want to do it for just saying, gee, I do something, I sell it in a year or two, I make $20 million, I move on. The world doesn't work like that most of the time. So focusing on making something big or doing whatever you're doing is more important than say, let's kind of do something and sell it and move on.
Yeah, I think amazing wisdom for everybody out here. So Jay, I 100% agree with you. You got to watch every penny, and you've been bootstrapping, and that's the philosophy which goes a long way. But, for the first-time entrepreneur, even when I built my first company, it was a big issue. As you onboard people, they're not working out. And it takes a lot of courage to part ways. So what will be your advice? And second question to that, right, as you go from a startup to start scaling, how do you give control, right, to get some of the seasoned leaders to help?
Yeah, these are very good questions. I often believe that ideas are a dime a dozen. It's the execution of the idea that makes things successful. Execution is number one. Whatever I'm thinking today and whatever cool idea you're thinking today, there are 200, 500 people already are thinking of the same idea. Can you execute is the most important thing. And with that starts with you as the leader having conviction, courage, and really commitment. And then having a team that's committed to it. So the founding team plays the most important role. You need to make sure they are in there to work with you properly. In fact, one of the things we would say at Zscaler, when people interview, part of the thing was we want to kind of unsell them on Zscaler. Maybe Zscaler is not good for you to join. Okay. Because look, we are really tough, demanding, we are really moving at a faster pace, you have to learn all the stuff. And we say it's not for everyone. So we want to really make sure people who really want to really align with what we want to do. A startup culture, a culture of passion, drive, a culture that's not focused on, my ego, my status of these business class flights and all this stuff. I must stay in the 6-star hotel rather than a 4-star hotel. All those things are part of the stuff. And then everything doesn't work out. Okay. So being able to change is important. And it's easy to say it's hard. Okay. And these leaders, then it's not that they're not working out. That A players, the B players, the C. Everyone eliminates C players. Hard part is eliminating B players. They're pretty good, but not good enough. Okay, that's where you actually. Even I look at me and realize, man, every time I have moved a leader out, I kind of said, reflecting on it, I was 6 months too late in making the change. I'm trying to learn from it, but I'm often still 6 months late in making the change. So it's part of the learning process. There are no simple right or wrong answers. But someone who is best for your startup, when you are a 50-person company, 100-person company, may not be the right person when you are a 500-person company. The priorities change. You have to kind of keep that in mind. At the same time, people also make mistake when they bring people from very large companies. Someone who is running a 2,000-person team in sales with whatever, say, $1 billion in sales, they come to your company where you're doing $10, $20 million. It'll be very hard for them to adjust and be successful. They have 10 layers of management, this and that. It's hard for them to roll up their sleeves and do what needs to be done. So I look for people who are good for making the company successful for the next 24 to 36 months. If they can do that, that means they've seen some scale where it needs to be. The scale is too high, too far. It's not going to work. And if the person can work and do a good job for 24 to 36 months, that's wonderful. If they're able to scale beyond that, great. If not, you make the call at that time. Those things are very, very important. Often I talk about this metaphor. I tell people, once you move out of your little apartment to a mansion, you can never move back. Okay. Are you really ready to move back and roll up your sleeves and get what I'm saying? So that alignment is important. Lots of people feel that they can, but it's hard.
I agreed. I know growing up in India, we were taught by our parents, jitni badi chadar utne pair philao, right? Maybe you can translate that. That is so important in a startup company. So one more question, Jay, and then we will open up for the audience. As you have built so many companies, it's always a balance, and obviously you bring a different skill set. You are deeply technical, you are market facing, you can do all things, right? But the balance between the head of product management and engineering, especially in the early days, and then even later as you're building new products, and the QA, obviously we saw some of the rumblings. What will be your guidance to the team to pay attention beyond the architecture? That becomes a very critical aspect in building companies.
Yeah, so it's part of selecting the right team. And as you grow, how do you delegate? What do you do with that? You complement leaders with the kind of skill set you need. Yes, I may have broad background, but you need strong sales leaders in each area. You need strengths, and especially the areas you are weak in. You need to bring in strong people out there. And delegation, how, what, where, it becomes an interesting challenge too. At least there you do everything. Okay. You bring new people along. How do you delegate? It becomes interesting challenge. There's no simple answers. I still look at it. I struggle with it. I ask my question. Am I being too micromanager? Am I letting things go? What I learned is it's easy to let things go. When your leaders are wonderful, I have no problem. Okay. When they aren't doing well, they're doing an okay job, then it's hard. Then you kind of are in. Then I ask myself and say, if I'm trying to do this leader's job too often, it's not a good thing. Either you need to change or the leader should be changed. Some of those things are an ongoing journey. It's transformation. I'm going through transformation on myself. All of us, I think being able to reflect and say, how do I do better? One of the things I'm a big fan of is always looking for doing things better in every aspect. And that feeling allows you to really keep on looking for incremental changes. Perhaps one of the most important things I've learned in my life is to be self-confident and self-critical at the same time. I really cherish it because you need confidence, you need swagger, you need conviction to move forward in tough times. If you don't, you're going to second guess yourself all the time. Don't second guess on some of the areas. And there'll never be a perfect data. You got some amount of data, then you got some gut feel, you move on. And if you need to course correct, you course correct. Being self-critical is a way of thinking about what are areas of improvement? How do I get better? It keeps you grounded. Right? In fact, my leadership meetings are more about reviews than all. You pat on your back for 10 minutes, great job. Then the next 50 minutes are about poking holes and looking for the bad. Okay. And typical management stuff out there, especially in larger companies, often is to look good. Okay. I mean, all these PowerPoint slides get together over 2 weeks to really show and present to the CEO how good we are. That's fine. We really need to focus on where are we weak, how do we get better. Those are the kind of things you focus and you figure out, you transform. You need to know what took you from 0 to $100 million is not going to take you to $1 billion. And what took you $1 billion is not going to take you $5 billion. What tangible changes are you making in product, in teams, and all that kind of stuff is part of ongoing journey.
Great, Jay. Maybe we'll open it up. We'll take 2 questions. Then I want to do a lightning round. Come to know a little bit more about Jay on a personal level. All right, go ahead, sir.
And if you can state your name and the area you're from.
If you can get a microphone. Okay, here. Take this while it's coming.
Yeah. My name is Bala Joshi. I'm been in the microprocessor industry for 30 years, Intel and other companies. Right now, I advise and mentor startups. The question that I have for you, Jay, is that you're a visionary. Internet, if you look back at the last 20, 30 years, brought about several hundreds of billions of dollar businesses like search, Google, social media, Meta, cybersecurity, yourself and many other companies, and several other mega industries. Generative AI, if you look at the 20, 30 years, what are the possibilities with respect to what they will sprout up in terms of hundreds of billions of dollars of new businesses?
Yeah. So I'll give you a general directional view. I mean, internet became the foundation for everything. Mobile phones wouldn't have happened. Okay. All the stuff that came around, cloud is built on internet, SaaS is built on internet, and everything kind of came around. I mean, if you look at AI, there are 2 aspects of AI. What we call predictive AI, essentially machine learning type of stuff. You can need tons of data and predict stuff. Has been evolving for the last several years. And we have been doing it to figure out threats and whatnot. But Gen AI generally got the entire world's attention, and it's pretty disruptive. Generate anything and everything. So while there'll be a few AI-focused companies, but AI will become part of everything we do in every aspect of life. I mean, we are leveraging internally for our customer support, kind of basic function, code development, QA testing, and all that kind of stuff. But we're building products where AI can do, potentially, imagine if you could predict a breach before it happens. All those possibilities are there. So I believe you see some of the companies in the video of the world out there enabling the foundation of AI out there. But then AI gets embedded in every software. I mean, the world runs by software. Of course, you need GPUs and CPUs and all the stuff out there. But every aspect, I mean, you can dream from all kinds of stuff, right? We start from co-pilots. Now they say, how about agents that can do everything for you? It's happening. It'll keep on happening at a faster pace. We should be thinking about how does my company really take in our AI to leapfrog some of the other things can be done. Take data protection. The way you did data protection and detection was very rudimentary. Regex and all the stuff. Now with Gen AI, you can do amazing kind of stuff. So I think it's a great opportunity for all of us to be mindful of. But there'll be a lot of fluff, there's a lot of hype going on, right? And just like every hype cycle, there'll be hype cycle and fluffy stuff will go away. Companies' real stuff will really do well.
Go ahead, sir.
Uh, I'm Dr. K.R.S. Murthy. I've done foundational research work in NSA and CIA, in the areas that you're working on, from Bell Labs. One of the ideas, I'm just openly saying it, is to be able to challenge what, I'm not making it in negative way, I'm making it positive.
Sure.
Challenge the claims that Zscaler has in terms of security as one example only, and throw it open in a closed door hackathon or an open hackathon, bringing the who is who's. I can bring in top guys from NSA, you probably know, and CIA who work for me now, some of them, in another company. So that will be the best way to get the best ad, best publicity, best, now you are the king, more than ever. Thank you.
Yes, a very good idea. We actually have been running a bunch of hackathons. It's actually a good idea. We welcome the opportunity to get NSA engaged. It's a good thing. I mean, the Fortune 500 companies we're dealing with, actually most of them come and run their own tests. Okay, they kind of say, your stuff, well, I want to run my own stuff, so maybe you can take it offline.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi Jay, my name is Anand. I'm co-founder, CEO of a security company called Fortanix. And listening to you, you're really an inspiration for a lot of us building companies in enterprise and in cyber. I have a question for you. This is debate going on around founder mode and manager modes. So I would love to hear your thoughts on this debate.
Founder-run versus professional manager-run companies is what the question is.
Yeah.
Look, my answer is biased. Look, the founder-led companies do bring a lot of passion and conviction, which professional CEOs often don't bring. Okay. But a founder, when you are the best in founding, you may not be the best in leading. So I ask that question to me all the time. Jay, how are you going to change when your company goes from this to this? What changes are you making yourself? So you start thinking about, so what have I done in some of these areas? Okay. I started picking at the board where people had actually seen and done business at scale. So they bring some of the input for me. Right? And I picked up, okay, in the scale engineering, for example, Charlie Giancarlo, who was the CTO of Cisco, I got to know him early on and say he had built things at scale. Let him be the board member. Adding someone in the sales side who had seen scale, the board plays a role. Then you start thinking about your leadership team. What have they done? How are they done? How do you scale with them? How do you change and adapt? It is an ongoing process and journey. If founders can evolve, it's a good thing. I do think that often VCs are a little too biased towards professional CEOs. And I think founders get moved aside probably more often than they should be. Look at the track record of, you study, I don't have a quantitative study, but I have enough anecdotal data of the companies I watch and look and say, how many companies where founders got removed and professional CEO came in and they became successful? I don't think the track record is very good. Now, you can say overall, very few startups succeed, okay, which is a better way. But I think it's a good thing for founders to think through, go through some coaching and learning. It could be formal and informal. I use some of the mentors as sounding boards. CEO is a very lonely place.
I agree, 100%, Jay. So maybe I'll do a lightning round and then I'll invite a few folks as we recognize you as a business leader of the year. Atlanta is where you started your journey. So Atlanta or Silicon Valley, which is your favorite city now? For building businesses.
Because both have advantages, but I like the vibrancy of Silicon Valley, with lots of sharp people with different ideas and energy.
Are you a Niners fan?
I'm not sure I'm a fan of anybody there.
Maybe we can have them get some intelligence from you to crack up their special teams. What's your favorite restaurant in the Silicon Valley? And what kind of food you like?
You know, I started learning and getting into health a while ago. I have a weird mind. If something is good for my health, I start liking it. If it's bad for my health, I start disliking it automatically. I'm not into a whole lot of food. If you ask me, do I have a favorite restaurant? I don't. Do I have a favorite hotel? I don't. A favorite? I don't. Okay, all these things just happen to be there. As long as I get healthy, good food, that's all I care about. Okay.
So Jay, you've traveled across the globe. Which is your favorite city where you would want to go to unwind?
Honestly, I don't like cities. I would rather unwind on Lake Tahoe and doing lots of hikes and be with nature. Okay.
So I know you are, what's an area of impact which is important for you and your family? We are very fortunate, and giving back is an important area. It'll be good for people to know areas which are important for making an impact for you and the family.
Yeah, so we have kind of two broad areas of interest. Improving health is one, improving education is the other one. I'm involved in a number of areas out there, generally looking at where at this stage I don't have to spend too much time, but I trust that the contribution made reach the destination rather than kind of get spent in between people. My big kind of emotional moment was when COVID happened and a lot of my employees calling me from India and saying, my mother is in bad shape. I can't find a hospital bed with oxygen and all that kind of stuff. So we teamed up with AIF, America India Foundation, and we're heavily involved in sending stuff and helping them out. That's a good thing. There are a number of great people in the valley. This OSAT that V.V. Jagdish is driving one school at a time is a great organization, love to help. There's an organization that's doing 1 million surgeries a year, based right here. I'm sorry, missing the name. But those are some wonderful causes that are helping India. They need a lot of help.
Great, Jay. So maybe final closing comments before I get Rajan, Dinesh, and Ram. One question, go ahead.
Jay, you're a legend, living legend, and we are deeply honored to have you here today. Your contributions to technology and society and the way you've emerged and built yourself, self-made, amazing human being, 360 degrees. And one quick question for you is, you are on the top. You're now at the pinnacle as a human being in every front you can think of. How do you foresee yourself in the next phase of your life? Now, you're an entrepreneur. Are you going to continue this pathway? Are you thinking another company after this? Yeah. Do you ever think of that?
So first of all, I think you're giving me too much credit. Okay, appreciate your kind words. I look at sitting here as a big opportunity for us. We're in the early stage of the journey. I'm enjoying it, making a difference out here. So it's a wonderful thing. I don't think I need to do a real for-profit startup anymore. I mean, at some stage move into a non-profit stuff that's kind of run more like a business with guidelines, all that kind of stuff, achieve goals.
most likely in the area of education or healthcare.
Great, great. Maybe Jay, your closing comments, and then let's get the folks on the stage.
Look, I'm so proud to see India and Indians having done so well. We all get inspiration from each other. We all learn from each other. I think it's great the way Thai started some 25 years ago. I was involved in Thai very early on. It was very, very helpful. Wish you were there, all there. So Kanwal Reiki of the world, I think they have been a great support. I think we as Indians providing better support for each other, engaging, is a wonderful thing. I was making comments earlier that I think we can learn a few things from Israel. One country that does better than us in this area, or better than any other country in this area for their diaspora, is Israel. And they have seen a lot of good success for such a small country. So look at them and say, how could India do better by learning from them?